Hey everyone, welcome to the season finale of the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show. I'm sitting with a wonderful gentleman whose name is known throughout the entire leather world. He is the fourth generation owner of the Hermann Oak Tannery. It is with great pleasure for me to introduce to you guys Shep Hermann. Shep, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Steve.
This is a wonderful facility, and you put out just a world-class product.
I don't put it out. We've got 70 people here that make it.
No,
They're the ones that do it.
Yeah, well, they do a good job. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the history of this tannery. You are fourth owner generation, and can you dive back and talk to us about the tannery and how your family started it and where it's at today?
Well, let me take it back to the beginning if I could here.
Absolutely.
If you go back at least 5,000 years, back in the Stone Age, before people had invented bronze and iron and the rest of it, there was leather. Leather tanning is the world's oldest manufactured product. It's the oldest chemistry known to mankind. Otzi the Iceman was on Earth here. He dates back 5,000 years ago. He had 7 or 8 different kinds of leather on his body. But leather was just developed many, thousands of years ago. We have no idea because usually it degrades. But it was a key to the advancement of humankind because it provided clothing, it provided shelter, and it provided transportation, first in the form of shoes and later in the form of being able to harness horses and to ride horses. So it has been a key to humankind throughout history. Fast forward, most of the leather, if you go back over time, was made with organic materials, especially tree bark, which is how we still make it today. Some of it was made using aluminum. That's the Indian tan that you are familiar with. But 99% of it was all either tree bark or nuts or some sort of organic material that is high in what are called tannins, which is an acidic compound that makes up tannic acid. Along about the late 1800s, some smart French chemists were experimenting with lots of different things, iron tannages and what have you, and came up with chromium. Chromium turned out to have a very high affinity for leather fibers. Basically, what we are doing when we're tanning leather is we are tanning a skin of some sort, is we are preserving it so that it can be dried out and still be flexible. Because if you take a regular hide off of any animal and you dry it, it's very hard, and that has a few uses, but not a lot. If you keep it moist, it rots very quickly, just like meat. Well, tanning preserves it so that you can dry it out and have it be flexible and have it be used for many years. And you can imagine some prehistoric guy throwing a hide aside in the savannah and having it fall in a brown pool of water and having it be there a year later and him coming back and studying it and thinking that, looking at it and saying, what caused this? And the brown water was caused by a tree that had fallen in there. And he figured out that tree plus water plus hide made leather. And he took it back to the cave, and the missus was very happy. And he said, let's do this again.
Yeah.
But anyway, 1800s, chromium was developed. The chromium tanning was developed. It was patented. It went nowhere. And then along about the early 1900s, when still you had major tanneries around the world, and originally there was a tannery next to every butcher shop, and then once we got railroads in, and you started being able to transport goods, then you started getting larger and larger tanneries. Ours was started in 1881. A lot of that was around the railroad. So you had large tanneries by then. In your hometown of Milwaukee,
Yep.
You had a lot of very large tanneries that are starting. And the Milwaukee boys found this concept that the French had developed, and they made it work industrially.
Gotcha.
And of course, you know, it takes an American to disrupt the industry, of course, right?
Yes.
The worldwide industry.
Yep.
And very quickly, most of the tanning went from the organic tanning, the bark tanning like we do, and became chrome tanning. And a lot of it had to do with cost. Because at that point in time, if you go back here 200 years, our tanning took 100 years. If you go back 100 years ago, our tanning would take 6 months as we learned how to concentrate the chemicals. The chrome tanning could be done in those days probably 2 or 3 days, and nowadays it can be done in less than 1 day. So because it was so quick, it was adopted very quickly.
Yep.
And it became the preferred type of tanning. So most of the veg tanneries turned over into chrome. We stayed with our vegetable tanning.
Yep.
Because we were in the horse trade primarily. And the vegetable leather lent itself more to the horse trade. My double great-grandfather came up from Arkansas during the war. That's the Civil War for any of you history buffs. And his son apprenticed here in town and started, and then came down and basically took over a small existing tannery and grew it into what we know as Hermann Oak Leather today.
Wow.
And that's why, you know, our family's been at it for 4 generations. Through all the ups and downs, you know, we started with some buffalo hides and quickly got into cattle hides. And harness leather was our main product up through World War II. Harness leather was a strategic material during World War I, but in World War II, World War II was a mechanized war. We didn't need horses to pull the cannon around the fields, the battlefields.
Yeah.
And so our business dried up. We had already lost the buggy trade to the car, and we then were losing the farm trade to the tractor right after the war. So my father came in. He had to reinvent the company. Typically, a company has to be reinvented every generation. In the internet trade nowadays, it's every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So my father was third-generation entrepreneur, as I call him, and he got us out of the harness business, even though we still make a little harness, and got us into the saddle trade, the tack trade, the craft trade, the holster trades. That's really the basis of our product line now. And then I took over, and I was second generation. I've got a saying that if the second generation doesn't kill a company, the third generation usually does. And here we are, fourth generation. Why we're here, and who knows? By the grace of God, I guess.
Well, you make a really good product.
But we have reinvented the culture here, and I think we'll talk about that later.
Yep. So let's talk about how Hermann Oak does the tanning and how you start from acquiring the actual side of leather or the hide, the raw material, and then can you walk us through that process and then all the way to the final delivery?
We start by purchasing hides, which are taken off of the animal. The cattle are killed for their meat.
Yes.
Okay? Let's be very explicit about that.
Yeah.
We take what's called the offal, which is something that if we didn't take the hides, it would be landfilled. So we provide an outlet for those hides and turn it into something that is highly, highly useful and will last for many, many years and does not bleed microplastic particles into the waste stream.
Yep.
We buy that hide from one of the major packers. They will salt cure it, which preserves it temporarily. We go with the major packers because they have automated takeoff equipment, and you have very few butcher scores on the back of the leather, and because they cure very, very quickly. And both of those are critically important to a tanner. We pay through the nose for them, but we're glad to get them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we buy the jumbo native steers. Native meaning that they are unbranded because our customers tend not to like a brand right in the middle of their saddle seat.
Yep.
And jumbo because people like thick, big pieces of leather. That's probably the top 1% of the hides produced here in the United States is what we buy.
Wow.
We bring that in here, and it goes through three major areas. The first area, we take the pH up quite high, and we depilatate the hair. We dissolve the hair. The hair comes off, and we swell the hide, and we get it ready to accept the tanning. The second part of our process is when we actually do our tannings. We do it in vats, the old-fashioned way, even though a lot of vegetable tanners have migrated to newer processes. That is where the difference is between us and the chrome tanners is right there. We then go into a third area, which is our drumming area, and that's where we wash it, we can color it, dye it, that sort of thing. And then we wring it and spread it out, what we call setting, and dry it. And then we can finish the top coat in our finishing department if we choose to put a top coat on.
Hey y'all, I want to talk to you about the very first sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show, and it is Leather Machine Company. If you are looking to upgrade your workshop or to speed up the process on making items, then look no further than Leather Machine Co. They have various sewing machines of multi-purpose needs, along with leather cutting and splitting machines. Check out their website or give them a call for more information. Now, let's go back to the show. I walked through the tannery, and there is just, the smells are so, it's pungent, and it's not a bad smell to me. It's just through the many steps, it's just fascinating to see raw cow skin folded from the pallet, goes into one, keeps going down, all the way through the line, and then when you get to the final, where it's just nice and hot upstairs, and you see all the leather hides or leather sides all just stacked nice and neatly. It's truly a sight to behold because I've never seen anything like it before. It's just like, wow, it's like there's that much leather that is here, and you guys do a phenomenal job through it with all these workers, and which leads me actually to my next question.
And let me stop you there for 1 second. The smells you're smelling are all naturally occurring smells. They're very organic.
Okay.
Anybody that's grown up on a farm is very at home here.
Yeah.
The first smell you smell is that of sulfur, which is one of the most ubiquitous chemicals and everywhere. It's in human bodies. It's everywhere.
Yep.
The second is ammonia, and that is where you're actually breaking down some of the hairs and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into any farm, that's what you smell.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The third is tanning, and our bark tanning is a sweetish smell, and yet when we put it in our vats, there's a little fermentation there. So if you ever go through a winery, remember that smell.
Yeah.
You'll smell the same thing.
Yeah, you know, it does. You're right. Now that I think about it, I didn't put two and two together because I'm thinking too much of leather, but you're right. A good winery does have that very similar.
And it's all organic.
Yep. Wow. That's great. All right, let's get back to the lovely employees. Every single person here that I've walked by, I said hello to, watched them do their job, they are so happy to say hello. They say hi, they wave, they want to show you what they're doing. It's like, it's got such a good family vibe here. This culture here is very refined. I would love for you to explain what is so special about the Hermann Oak culture, because everyone here definitely has a smile on their face.
Mm-hmm. And that's good to hear because we've just hired a new HR firm. They came in and did over 300 interviews. They only found 2 negative comments out of over 300.
That's amazing.
They say they've never been in a company like that before.
Oh,
this
lovely.
doesn't happen by accident.
Yep.
It is something that we started here about 15 years ago, where our old command and control culture wasn't working. And It was a difficult time competitively, and we said we've got to change. And this is where we reinvented the company. We learned about the lean manufacturing style of leadership, which is the Toyota system, and started looking into it. And lean manufacturing has a lot of great tools, which is Kaizen and Six Sigma and all the 5S, all these kind of things that businessmen love. But it became apparent to us very quickly that that is not the underpinning of why Toyota is now the largest car company in the world and what has made them so incredibly successful. It's the culture that they have there. It's an inclusive culture where you include the workforce in the running of the company. The second leg of the stool is that you've got to. We changed out over 80% of our managers, and we brought in leaders instead.
Yep.
People who could get people to voluntarily want to follow them.
Yeah, a good leader is really hard to come by. It hurts. It hurts the company more when a leader leaves or retires, because now you have big shoes to fill.
Well, but we switched over 80% of our managers. Everybody said the company would fail when we did that. Think of the institutional knowledge that left.
Yeah.
And yet, when you replace it with a good leader, they step up very quickly.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's really what you're seeing here, is that leadership on a frontline basis. Okay? I enable it. I said, this is where I think we ought to go.
Yeah.
My father actually said it could never work. We proved him wrong.
He probably got a kick out of that.
He didn't understand it.
No, got it. Got
it. We said this is where we're going to go, and we had to make a commitment there, and we had to walk the walk that we were talking, and we had to convince people that we were trustworthy, and we had to respect them. We've got a whole segment of our mission and goals. It's a very formalized system that we have here, and that we teach, and that we require. And that is why you see what you see here.
Yeah, the culture it's just, everyone is smiling. It's awesome. I love it.
We put people first.
Yeah. As I walk the tannery with the camera, nobody knows who I am, and they're just doing their job, and they come up, they give me a little fist bump, and they say, hey, they're like, thanks for coming. How are you doing today, sir? And I'm like, wow, like, it just feels like a good family. So.
Well, running an organization, running a family is no different than running a business. We have a rule here we call our 80-20 rule, which is 80% coaching, 20% discipline. We also call it 80% managing, 80% leadership, and 20% management.
Ooh.
And the discipline is absolutely critical, because you've got to make sure that people are playing well together, and if somebody steps out of line, you have to take action. Yeah. We also call this our loving toughly rule, which means I love you as the day is long, and I will do everything in my power to help you in your career, in your personal life, in whatever you do.
Yep.
But we are going to respect the rules. That's the tough part of it.
Hey everyone, our second sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show is none other than the Leather Crafters Journal. Carrying on a tradition of 68 years of publishing the magazine for leather workers and artists worldwide, they also host 3 trade shows in the United States and 1 in Europe. Give them a call or visit their website and use the promo code COMMUNITY, and you will receive an additional free magazine added to your subscription at no charge. The Leather Crafters Journal truly sets the standard with staying up to date on all things leathercraft. If it's about leather, it's in the journal. Now, back to our show. Let's talk about environmental impact. Hermann Oak has a lot of massive environmentally friendly things, a lot of organic material. Can you dive into what impact Hermann Oak does for the environment?
That is really twofold. The first are the raw materials that we use here, which are all organic. Tanneries use a lot of water, okay? And tanneries have always been situated along streams to have the water coming in and then the water going out. As they got larger and larger, the effluent coming out of tanneries was fairly concentrated, and it could overwhelm the small streams that it was on. And because of that, when the EPA first promulgated their initial requirements back in the 70s, tanneries were one of the 7 listed industries that were to be regulated. The products that we will bring in and discharge, as I mentioned earlier, are all organic. We're talking about limestone. We're talking about tree bark. We're talking about fish oils, all these kinds of things, which in small quantities are fine, but in concentration can be difficult for the environment. We will actually pre-treat our water here, our wastewater, and then we send it out to the local POTW. And that's it's the large wastewater treatment facility here that's about 5 blocks away. And they do the major treatment. But we pay them for it. Mm-hmm. We spend about maybe 7% of our revenues on being compliant with all the laws. We have always taken the attitude that we want to be the first to come on board with a new law. We don't fight them because it's good for the environment, and B, you can't fight City Hall. So when HAZCOM came out, we actually wrote the book here that the larger companies like Monsanto and Mallinckrodt adopted. Because we were the first to implement it.
Wow.
But anyway, we spend, a fairly large portion of our revenue on this, and we thank our customers for paying for that because that is baked into the price. It has to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of tanneries claim that it's the wastewater treatment costs that drove them out of business, but it's really more, the industry going over to China that did it.
Got it. Yeah.
So what we send to them is really no different than what you get off of a farm or out of a heavily wooded area, where the streams in heavily wooded areas are all brown, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's the organic tannins that are being leached out into the stream. It's very, very organic, very natural.
What do you think is next for veg tanning? Do you stick with the principle of if it's not broken, do you not fix it and stick with tradition? Or do you try to make small, minuscule advancements to help get the product to be even better than what it currently is?
The answer to the first question in the large scale is yes, we don't fix it. We don't change it. The answer to the second one in the small area is yes, we're into constant improvement. Yeah. From the large picture standpoint, if we had been following most of the other tanners, we would have switched over to chrome here 100 years ago. Yeah. But our type of tannage lends itself to the industries that we're in. It's compatible with the skin, eminently compatible with the skin, be it our skin or the horses. It's thicker, it's firmer. When you put it into a saddle, you can carve it. You can do all these wonderful things to it. It edges very, very well. It molds and holds its shape so that when you're making a holster out of it, it's got that, it keeps that shape.
Yeah, it's got that good rigidity.
Exactly. So vegetable tanning has use in a niche part of the world of leather. It also has it's a different color. It looks different than a piece of chrome leather. A piece of naked chrome leather is bluish, and that is not nearly as pleasing to the eye as a piece of wood. I equate our leather, especially the older leathers, to a beautiful mahogany sideboard. It doesn't have any paint on it, where most of the chrome leathers are painted, your car seats,
Yep.
your shoes, or what have you. So we sell a completely naked product. You can see into the grain. It's actually three-dimensional. If you bend it, you can see it comes up a different color. Your eye is seeing that. Taking pictures of our leather, photos, is very difficult because the photography will typically only capture the top layer, whereas your eye is catching all the way into the leather.
Yep.
So if you're looking to make something that is beautiful, we have the leather for that.
Yep.
As far as continual improvement, we always have to be tweaking things. Everything, little things will change, or we might be wanting to get into a new marketplace, like we are here recently. The seats, the leather in these seats is new for us here over the last 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's going into bags, it's going into upholstery. And we, this is quite a bit different than our standard thick, firm leather.
Yeah.
This is thinner, it's softer. But you'll notice that it is still unfinished. You can see into it, and that's what gives it its beauty. You'll also see all the, this is all the same leather. The back sides of these chairs and sofa are our standard tooling leather. The seats are, and the back of this seat right here are all this newer leather. So we're constantly innovating that way.
Gotcha.
Leather tanning, we make about 10 different products with 100 chemicals and 1,000 individual steps and 10,000 interactions. Okay?
That's true.
And it's up to us as tanners to understand the most important 300 or 400. So we're constantly looking at that and saying, okay, do we have the right balance?
Yeah.
It's all a system of trade-off.
Yeah.
You can have more of this, but you're going to give up this.
Gotcha.
So we're constantly tweaking that and then making improvements to come up with newer product.
Let's talk about the properties in the wattle and quebracho bark.
Okay.
Why is that so important and so pertinent in the beautiful veg tan process that you make?
Well, let's step back for a second. Those are two products that have come into very large use because they're very high in tannin.
Oh.
And the advances I was talking about earlier, where it used to take a year and then 6 months, and now it takes us, a bit over a month to tan the leather.
Yep.
Those advances are brought about because of the concentration of tannin, of the tannin molecules in the liquors. If you go back 140 years now, we used oak bark, which came from right down the road here in the Ozarks.
Gotcha.
And the name of our company is Hermann Oak Leather. And when we typically get a very upset customer over the years who calls up, he says, I don't want to talk to a Hermann, give me Mr. Oak. But oak is actually the bark that we use. And it is, it made for a very, very good piece of leather. Here about 50 years ago, the wattle and quebracho that came into use were coming from South Africa and Argentina and Brazil. And as we got containerization and started being able to ship this around the world, we switched over to that. The oak, though, was originally in our name because it was a marketing. It was a marketing name. The oak leathers were of higher quality in those days than the hemlock tannages that were quicker, and yet they didn't produce leather that had as good a longevity. Gotcha. So we've always been in the upper end of the trade.
Yeah. How does it make you feel seeing so many beautiful leather pieces made around the world, so many saddles, so much just jaw-dropping, inspiring work that people do with your leather, and knowing that it's literally made right across this building, just right down the hall here. And it's like mind-boggling. And I wanted to know, how does that affect you when you see such beautiful stuff?
Well, I'm awestruck. I'm also jealous because I have absolutely none of that talent. But be that as it may, I like to say that we make the canvas,
Yeah.
and our customers make the art.
Fair.
They're the ones with the true innovative talent. Our talent is designing a chemical process and designing an organization with the right culture.
Yeah.
That's our talent. And our customers have the creative talents. And I like to think that we make a very good team.
You do. Now, one of my favorite questions to ask people on this podcast is, what is their favorite tool or their machine? Obviously, we are at a tannery, and I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite process, either seen or doing in the tannery?
10,000 interactions. I mean, there is really no machine that's any more important than the next. There's no chemical process that's more important because they all fit together. Yeah. There's an old saying that when a hide comes into your plant, you can never make it any better. You can always make it worse. So really, the very, very first soak that we put that hide into is as important, more important, really, as what we do at the very back end.
Yeah. What does the next 10 years look like for Hermann Oak?
Well, I'm trying to retire.
Well, let's say after you retire.
We have been working here over the last 10 years in creating a new team of young leaders that can take this company through another generation. Lovely. That has been my primary goal. I'm not one of those that has to have final say on everything, and I'm not going to die in the saddle and then leave a horse without any food.
Yeah.
So we are developing that team right now. We are very fortunate that my nephew, Drew Gulick, has just joined us. He's my sister's oldest son.
Okay.
He has the same education I do. He's an engineer, which fits the chemistry here. It fits running a technical plant. And he also has a lot of business experience. And so the goal is to have him buy the company out and have it go another generation.
Oh, love it. Well, Shep, I want to wrap up the interview, and I want to ask you, how can people contact the tannery if they have any questions about what type of leather, or if they have any oddball questions about like tanning processes, or even how to find a distributor? How can they get a hold of you guys?
Just look on our website. Our phone number's there. Our distributors are there.
And speaking of distributors, how many are in America off the top of your head?
We've got 8 or 9 here in the U.S., and we've got 3 or 4 overseas.
Wonderful. Good. Well, Shep, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for actually being in this first season. I'm so blessed and so grateful that I get to showcase Hermann Oak on season 1 of the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show. This has been just a jaw-dropping experience of seeing your tannery and what the culture and what the company is all about. It has just been, it's a great honor for me to highlight you guys. And
well, thank you for coming. What you see here, Steve, is based on the best book on leadership and management ever written in the history of mankind. You know what that is?
Please tell.
It is, the acronym is Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth, BIBLE.
Oh, look at that.
Everything we do here is based upon that.
Okay.
And if you see how the outgrowth of that is now the largest religion in the world, 31% of people are Christians. And you look at how it's grown because people want to follow.
Yeah.
And we have applied those same principles and have studied it.
Yep.
And when you apply that, people just jump on the wagon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're off with you.
Well, Shep, it has been such an honor sitting here with you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being the season finale guest on our show.
Thank you for your...
All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching and supporting season 1 of the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show. Take care and good luck on your future projects. And don't forget to take a look at any prior episodes if you missed any. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.